I think I'm going to start preaching patience when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks center position because I really do feel that they need to be patient here. We have some rumors that I'm going to be talking about today that I'm not really necessarily that much of a fan of, depending on, well, obviously, of course, it always depends on what assets the Canucks have to give up. And then you have training camp, okay? And when it comes to the Vancouver Canucks, they have a certain player that's just been playing like really, really well, and he's a center man, and you think to yourself, boy, maybe they do just have to be a bit patient with this player and then kind of go from there. But we're going to be getting into all of that in this video, guys. If you could make sure to hit that subscribe button, it would be so greatly appreciated. And thank you so much to those that are already supporting me as well. It is, as usual, very, very humbling. Now, as I was saying, when I talk about centermen, my favorite centermen are centermen with size, with defensive acumen, that are almost like defensemen forwards that can score, if you understand what I mean, because that's what a center is. Like, they're almost like a third defenseman out there that cover the middle of the ice, and it's just like you really need to take responsibility down low. You need to take responsibility in your zone, and another big thing with centers is you need to take responsibility also carrying the puck. And I don't know. It's kind of weird. I don't really want the Canucks to get a stopgap center, right? Like, I think they should have a championship mentality. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be, well, the Canucks might not win a championship this year. Well, of course, probably not. But what I mean by a championship mentality is why not try to draft and look for that center that's a championship player? Why not try to get, a Mason McTavish, who I think is a hell of a center, and that you could win a cup with that player. Not that he's the top center, but if you understand what I mean. That, just being patient. And this is why this rumor from the Boston Bruins and Vancouver Canucks, I'm not a huge fan of, in my opinion. But here we have a really interesting quote. Austin Sabrin of the Bruins Insiders recently reported on the possibility of Middlestat heading to the Vancouver Canucks. The rumored trade would have Nils Höglander and a second rounder heading to Boston in exchange for Middlestat. Okay, so let's stop the quote there. It's interesting. When you look at Höglander and a second round pick, that actually isn't a lot to give up. And I did see on my social media, I saw a lot of Canucks fans saying, they didn't say they loved Casey Middlestat, which I don't really like him that much either. But that's not a lot to give up, right? You're only giving up a Höglander, which I don't think he had a very good season. A second round pick is a pretty big asset, in my opinion. But that is actually a pretty reasonable amount to give up for Casey Middlestat. But then the question is Casey Middlestat in a Vancouver Canucks jersey, is that just a stopgap, or is that a guy that you think you can win a cup with? Or you think you can flip him? Or are you just getting this player because, you're just kind of desperate? I think it kind of sounds like that. I would have more likely just ride with Philip Hedl there, but maybe the Canucks just really want to have a good season to convince Quinn Hughes to stay, if you understand what I mean. Here we have another really interesting quote. Among the options the Vancouver Canucks have reportedly considered this summer, but have struck out on, include Marco Rossi, Christian Dvorak, and Mikael Granlund. However, there is one player who is a former first-round pick to keep an eye on over the coming weeks, and at the end of the quote. The funny thing is, I'm glad that they didn't get Christian Dvorak. I don't like Christian Dvorak, and Granlund is okay, but I just don't see him as that much better. Now, if they were to get Marco Rossi, I understand he's smaller, but I actually quite a bit like Marco Rossi. He doesn't have the size that I like in a center, but if I was to pick any centers in this list, Marco Rossi would be like the number one that I would like the Vancouver Canucks to get. And here we have the poll on Canucks Daily. It says, will the Vancouver Canucks trade for Casey Middlestat of the Boston Bruins? And 607 people voted no at 64%. So thank God the Canucks fans still have a brain in their head. I just don't like this move at all. I really am just not seeing the value. I just don't think it will make the Canucks a much better team at all. Like, you could argue it would give them more depth, but dude, a second round pick is a lot, man. Like, let's not forget that. Lane Hudson of the Montreal Canadiens was drafted in the second round. Ryan O'Reilly was drafted in the second round. Patrice Bergeron was drafted in the second round. So, let's start taking our second round picks a little bit more serious here. And this is why, to finish off the video, I wanted to touch on Braden Cootes. I had a hard read on this player because his junior numbers weren't necessarily jumping off the page. I touched on him a little bit on one of my last Canucks videos, and his numbers didn't really jump off the page very much. It wasn't like he was like he was kind of like a point per game player. And when these players are really hard to judge, because again, I said this before, that sometimes players like this that are really good defensively, they just tend to be like, for whatever reason, like really good in the NHL. Like Ryan O'Reilly is one of them. I'm telling you, Google it right now. Look at Ryan O'Reilly, Hockey DB. I'll bring it up on the screen right now. He actually really was like a point per game player. I think he played for the Erie Otters, and he wasn't even that like high end of a player, but he just ended up, he's just such a good NHL player. He is a proper centerman, and he is so good. And I almost see like Braden Cootes a possibility, not like he's going to be as good as Ryan O'Reilly, but just that he could be possibly that type of player, a very, very good defensive player with an offensive upside, if you understand what I mean. And here we have an interesting quote from the Canucks Army. Plenty of players have been putting on impressive preseason performances thus far, but none have made as large of an impression as Cootes, the 18-year-old drafted in 15th overall in this most recent draft. Now, this article here is arguing that it doesn't make sense for Cootes to make the National Hockey League. I mean, he's 18 years old, right? Because it's kind of crazy that if you look at it, he fills so many needs for the Vancouver Canucks too. He's got a bit of size. He's a right shooting center as well. Like, it's like, oh my God. Not only is he a center with a bit of size and two-way acumen, but he also shoots right. Like, man, like a right shooting center is so good because a lot of them just shoot left, and he can penalty. Maybe if he can penalty kill, a right shooting center is also very valuable for coaches on the penalty kill. Ask any NHL coach and they will tell you that for sure. And here we have another interesting quote. The Canucks' need for a 2C is well documented. It's as if it's yet unclear whether Philip Hedl will ever be healthy enough to fill that role, or whether Ratu's offense will translate enough to the NHL level for him to step into it. As of now, Cootes looks like a good bet to get to that level eventually, and if he can sort of do the job already and maybe grow into the role from there, why not start him on that path today? Close quote. Yeah, probably because he's just 18 years old. That's it. I mean, at the end of the day, the biggest thing that I would do with the Canucks is I would give Aatu Räty a shot. I'm a fan of Aatu Räty. I think that he's going to be a good quality centerman, or guy that has the ability to play center and give them depth there. I think that he is in his early 20s. I mean, it would be perfect if Braden Cootes was like, I don't know, 20 or 21. It wouldn't be that bad. You could look at him and say, no, like this is a player that could potentially start in the NHL. It's just he's just too young. But I will say though, man, he has had a really, really, really exciting preseason. He's looked good so far, so we will have to see where this ends up. Maybe he does end up getting a cup of coffee in the regular season with the Vancouver Canucks and then just getting sent back to junior, right? Maybe that's what happens, but ultimately I think that he gets sent back to junior, of course. Anyways, guys, I am going to leave this video here. If you could make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it, guys, and make sure to have a great day. Goodbye, guys.